Thank you, Brenda. It's great to be out here today. I just have a couple little stories. I won't take long working in the building here. I will say, I was just talking to Bob, when your work that we're doing up here and in the work you do in the community and when you come to the Capitol, I think that it is nice to go and really give respect to what Speaker of the House Chris Steele is trying to do as a Republican. He is very unique, and he's pushing his colleagues who are not comfortable with a lot of the policy changes that we need to make to be smart on crime and to have more compassion. And he's the most powerful legislator in the building, in the legislative side. And he's got a lot of compassion, and he's got a great capacity to try to understand this issue better. We're part of a big task force that's going on with some private money and the George Kaiser Foundation, working with a group out of Washington to study our correction system and to make recommendations to the legislature, which I think will be ones that we like. We're just starting it. So give him credit. He is a rarity in his party, and we shouldn't hold back our criticisms of the Republican Party and their policies, but he's a reformer, and he's catching a lot of flack for it. So when you come up here, please try to go by and build your relationship with him, because he's putting a lot on the line, which is great. But we had a lot of education reform bills this last year of the Republicans trying to find their own ways of reforming our public schools, a lot of which I didn't agree with, and I'm not going to go into that. And then Speaker Steele, along with some good bipartisan support on both sides, had a bill to move us more, especially on nonviolent offenses, on drug offenses, having a more smart and compassionate approach to dealing with especially women who are incarcerated for nonviolent offenses. And unfortunately, the bill got watered down quite a bit as it went through the process, which is just something that happens, but we did get something through. And when we passed it off the Senate floor, which is a very proud moment for me personally and a lot of the people we were working on it, and we don't have a lot of this up here right now, proud moments. I went over to a Republican that I served with who's one of these big education reformers. And we've got a pretty good relationship, although we don't agree very much, and we're sort of butting heads, and I said, Senator so-and-so, I don't want to mention him by name, this bill on incarceration reform that will help us also take care of the families of these women, these children who are left at home, and these broken families who were asked to go off to school and continue in their lives. This incarceration reform bill has more to do with education reform than any of the stuff that you guys have been trying to pass. And he sort of looked at me and said, Andrew, that's interesting. I've never thought of that. Now, I give him credit for being honest, but it's like you've never thought of that. You've never thought of the impact that these kids don't live in vacuums. So if their mom's in prison for 15 years for selling drugs, and the dad's not involved, and now the aunt or the grandma's taken, and they don't have any money, and they live down in class in 10 pen, and I mean, you don't think about the larger, complex, pressures on families. That has as much to do with education as changing the standards, the testing standards in the classroom. So that's a lot of what we're up against, is to have, when we're trying to make connections with the other side and to get them to understand the implications of not getting better policies on these issues, of how it's going to complicate what they're trying to do in the classroom or employment and all these things. But we've seen it. A lot of people work. Josh, who's going to speak here in a second, works on the front lines with people who are in the court system, in the prison system, trying to get their sentences changed. Wayne and Michelle are very involved in their neighborhood, which is a neighborhood that you've seen a lot of these people who have been incarcerated for very light offenses, where the sentences are much more severe than the acts that they commit. And I've seen it in a lot of the work I've done in my district and walking door to door. And so we've got to understand of what the impacts this have on our families and on these children especially. And so I feel a little optimistic that we're slowly making some progress in the right way, that rallies like this and the stories that you have, the people you're working with, people like Patricia Spotted Crow, who's one of our more higher profile cases, about what it's doing to their families, and really making sure that it's proportional, right? That whatever accountability may need to be there for her mistake is proportional. The punishment is proportional. There will be some punishment. That's the way our system is. But if we don't couple that with rehabilitation and treatment, then we're never going to be able to give her and her families that second chance. When you look at these little stones down here, these squares, what these are is when they were redoing the Capitol Dome, and the state didn't have enough money because they were too busy passing all these tax cuts for rich Republicans. So they didn't have the money. What they had to do is get private donations. I mean, this is the people's building, which is supposed to be supported by our tax money, but they don't have enough money to do the remodeling and the refurbishments that they wanted on top of all their other obligations. So these are all bought, okay, by private individuals who are generous and want to see it. And then if you go into the rotunda, you'll see very, very prominent corporate and company and individuals' names around the rotunda, Hobby Lobby and Chesapeake and others who've done it. And so, but the people whose names are on these squares, if you look at them, okay, they in the court system, and Josh can talk about this, are not going to be treated in the same way that Patricia is. Okay, the balances of power are tilted towards the connections you have and all those sort of things. And so you may have someone in Nichols Hills or in Heritage Hills in my district who has drug problems and maybe gets in trouble with the law. They're going to have a lot of ability through their lawyers and others to get out of that system and go up and get private treatment and maybe not be punished in the prison or in the Department of Corrections in the same way that these people, their families and children and spouses, would get treated. So this is sort of an ironic juxtaposition here that we're having this rally and you see these names, and I'm not attacking them, but they have a different world where every family's got substance abuse problems. I've struggled with mine, my family, we all have, you know, these are things that we've had, and some people have better avenues of dealing with them and second chances than others, and that's not the way our system's supposed to work. You know, everybody's supposed to have an equal shot. The system should work to giving people second and third chances, providing them the treatment they have. If they don't have the private resources, the state of Oklahoma should be there and deal with those things. So it's an honor to be here today. Thank you for coming out. I know it's going to get hot, and I'm glad we started this a little early. I have to leave to go off to family death that we have. We're going to go off to Tulsa and see some family. But thank you for everybody being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk.